Hello, and welcome. Whether you're a history buff, a curious traveler, or just someone who loves a good story, you're in the right place. Today we're embarking on a unique journey through the rockier, less traveled parts of American history. A side of the past that's often overlooked, but always fascinating. We're exploring the legacies of some of the United States' most memorable and sometimes infamous presidents. These are the leaders whose decisions shaped the nation, for better or for worse. These are the guys whose portraits in the White House probably get the most side-eye, the ones who spark debate and raise eyebrows even today. We'll connect the dots between their controversial decisions in Washington and the historic sites you can still visit today, places where history feels alive and the echoes of the past linger in every corner. This isn't just about ranking who was the worst, it's about understanding the impact, the context, and the stories etched into the places they left behind. Every monument, every plaque, every preserved room tells a tale of ambition, missteps, and sometimes redemption. Our number one pick might surprise you. It's a real curveball, and the reasons behind it might challenge what you thought you knew about American history. So, buckle up. This is going to be an eye-opening ride across the country and through time, as we uncover the stories that textbooks sometimes skip. We're diving deep into the controversies, scandals, and far-reaching consequences that defined these presidencies. From political blunders to personal failings, we'll see how their actions still ripple through our society today. If you love digging into the messy, complicated parts of history, please hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us bring more untold stories and hidden truths to light. It means the world to us and helps us keep these historical explorations going. Together we can keep history alive and relevant for everyone. Alright, let's get into it. Grab your curiosity, your sense of adventure, and maybe a notepad, because you're about to learn something new. Our countdown of the top 5 worst American presidents begins now. Get ready for a tour that's as surprising as it is enlightening. Kicking off our list at number 5, we have James Buchanan, a man whose presidency is often remembered not for what he did, but for what he failed to do. Buchanan's time in office is a cautionary tale, a story of missed opportunities and a nation teetering on the edge of disaster. He is known as the president who watched America unravel, presiding over a country that was splitting apart at the seams. The tension between North and South was reaching a boiling point, and Buchanan seemed paralyzed in the face of crisis. Being president right before the Civil War was like being the captain of the Titanic after it hit the iceberg, except Buchanan didn't even try to steer the ship away from danger. Instead, he watched as the nation drifted closer and closer to catastrophe, unable or unwilling to change course. Buchanan believed the best way to solve a problem was to pretend it didn't exist, especially with the slavery issue. He hoped that by ignoring the growing conflict it would somehow resolve itself. But the reality was, every day he did nothing, the crisis grew worse. His inaction was like pouring gasoline on a raging fire. Instead of calming the flames, he let them spread, fueling the anger and resentment that would soon explode into war. He left his successor Abraham Lincoln with a country already on the brink of war. Lincoln inherited a nation fractured by years of neglect, forced to pick up the pieces Buchanan left behind. Visit his home, Wheatland, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and you can feel the legacy of division. The quiet halls and manicured grounds stand in stark contrast to the chaos that gripped the nation during his presidency. Buchanan's presidency made the psychological distance between North and South feel like an ocean. The Mason-Dixon line became more than just a border. It was a chasm of mistrust, fear, and anger that he did nothing to bridge. The Dred Scott decision, supported by Buchanan, declared African Americans were not citizens, deepening national division. Rather than using his influence to challenge this injustice, Buchanan endorsed it, further alienating millions and pushing the country closer to conflict. His foreign policy was equally disconnected, focusing on buying Cuba while the country was falling apart. As the nation's unity crumbled, Buchanan's attention drifted to distant ambitions, ignoring the urgent needs at home. Buchanan's legacy is one of paralysis, a warning of what happens when leadership fails. He sat in the highest office in the land, yet seemed powerless or unwilling to act when the country needed him most. The historical sites from his time are reminders of the consequences of letting division fester. They stand as silent witnesses to a period when inaction and indecision paved the way for one of the darkest chapters in American history. The roads and railways of the late 1850s were arteries carrying the bad blood of a nation on the verge of collapse. Every train whistle and wagon wheel echoed the growing unrest as families and communities braced for the storm ahead. James Buchanan lands at number 5, not for malice, but for his catastrophic failure to lead. He wasn't a villain, but his inability to act made him a tragic figure, one whose choices, or lack thereof, had devastating consequences. He was the caretaker who let the house fall into ruin, leaving behind a legacy of division. The cracks in the foundation of the nation widened under his watch, and the damage would take generations to repair. His story is a stark reminder that sometimes the worst thing a leader can do is nothing at all. In times of crisis, silence and inaction can be just as destructive as the wrong action. Buchanan's legacy endures as a lesson in the cost of failing to rise to the moment when history demands it. Coming in at number 4 is Andrew Johnson, the man who fumbled the task of Reconstruction. Johnson, who rose from humble beginnings as a tailor in Tennessee, found himself thrust into the presidency after Lincoln's assassination. A moment when the nation desperately needed steady, visionary leadership. Following Lincoln, Johnson tripped on the way to the stage and landed flat on his face. This awkward stumble became a fitting metaphor for his entire presidency. He was unprepared for the immense responsibility and the fractured country he inherited. His idea of healing looked like letting the old South return to its old ways. Instead of forging a new path forward, Johnson seemed determined to restore the pre-war social order, ignoring the cries for justice and equality from newly freed Black Americans. Johnson's policies allowed the old power structures to reassert themselves, creating a climate of oppression. Former Confederates were welcomed back into positions of authority, and the promise of true freedom for millions was quickly undermined. The Black Codes restricted the rights of Black people, tying them to plantations. These laws were designed to keep Black Americans in a state of economic dependency and social inferiority, making emancipation feel like little more than a broken promise. Johnson's constant vetoing of civil rights legislation showed his true colors. He blocked bills meant to protect the rights of freedmen, forcing Congress to override him time and again. His stubbornness made progress nearly impossible. He wasn't interested in a new South built on equality. Schools for Black children were neglected and opportunities for advancement were systematically denied. The hope of Reconstruction faded as old prejudices regained their grip. Johnson's legacy is written all over the landscape of the South, with the rise of the Ku Klux Klan and violence against Black communities. His inaction and indifference allowed hate groups to flourish, terrorizing those who dared to dream of equality. The historical markers denote tales of tragedy and hope brutally extinguished. Each monument and gravestone tells a story of lives changed, dreams deferred, and a nation struggling to live up to its ideals. The deep-seated economic and social inequalities have roots in this period. The gap between the wealthy and the poor, between Black and white, was cemented by policies that favored the powerful and ignored the vulnerable. Johnson's presidency is a cautionary tale about how winning a war is one thing, but winning the peace requires vision and moral courage. Without a commitment to justice, the sacrifices of war can be rendered meaningless. He left scars on the nation that are still visible today. The wounds of his failures echo through generations, reminding us that the fight for equality and justice is never truly finished. At number 3, we have Franklin Pierce, a president who poured fuel on the fire. His presidency is defined by the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which overturned the Missouri Compromise. This led to Bleeding Kansas, a brutal, small-scale civil war. Pierce's decision shattered peace and deepened national divisions. His personal life was marked by tragedy affecting his presidency. His enforcement of the Fugitive Slave Act further enraged the North. The legacy of Franklin Pierce is one of a fractured America. He deepened the wounds that Buchanan would later fail to heal. Visiting his home in Concord, New Hampshire reflects a man who faded into obscurity. The travel and migration patterns of the 1850s were shaped by his policies. The rush to Kansas was a politically motivated, often violent migration. Franklin Pierce lands at number 3, a tragic figure whose actions made the Civil War inevitable. At number 2, we have Warren G. Harding, the scandalous president of the Roaring Twenties. His campaign promise was a return to normalcy, but America got corruption and incompetence. Harding's biggest flaw was his terrible judgment in Friends, appointing the corrupt Ohio gang. The Teapot Dome scandal was a massive bribery scandal involving government oil reserves. Harding's administration was riddled with corruption, overshadowing his few achievements. He died suddenly in office, and the full extent of the scandals was revealed posthumously. The Harding Memorial in Marion, Ohio stands in stark contrast to his reputation. The travel boom of the 1920s was marred by the scandals brewing in Washington. Warren G. Harding comes in at number 2, a man too weak and trusting to be president. His story is a classic tale of how personal friendships and poor judgment can lead to national disgrace. And here we are, the number 1 spot goes to Herbert Hoover. Hoover's failure wasn't about malice or corruption, it was a catastrophic failure of ideology and empathy. The Great Depression hit, and Hoover's belief in rugged individualism prevented effective action. His policies led to a humanitarian disaster with shantytowns bitterly nicknamed Hoovervilles. The impact on American travel was profound with desperate migration westward. The Bonus Army incident sealed his fate, showing a president isolated from his people's suffering. Hoover's presidency did have one major achievement, the Hoover Dam. But even its name is controversial, reflecting a complicated legacy. Herbert Hoover is number 1 because he was the brilliant man who failed. His rigid ideology prevented him from seeing the human cost of his inaction. His legacy is a powerful lesson. A president's philosophy can be more destructive than any scandal. And that's our tour through the legacies of some of America's most controversial presidents. From Buchanan's inaction to Hoover's ideological blindness, the Oval Office decisions have lasting impacts. These stories aren't just about politics, they're about people, division, and leadership failures. History isn't always pretty, but it's always important. Thank you for joining me on this historical journey. Exploring these complex chapters of the past helps us understand the present. If you found this journey eye-opening, please subscribe and join our community. Your support allows us to keep exploring history together. Let us know in the comments who you think should have been on this list. We believe in creating content that is accessible and enjoyable for everyone. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next journey into the past.